Hey there, everybody.
We are live again.
Yeah, so good to be hanging out with you guys here today.
Absolutely. I love Thursdays.
Yeah, me too.
Thursday's live stream day. It's fun.
Yeah.
Let's have fun with this.
Yep. Awesome. Waiting for a few people to get online.
That's right. Yeah.
Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'll give you a shout out. That's always fun. We have people from all over the world that tune in. So it's awesome to get to chat with you. Yeah.
How's your week been going so far, Golden?
Really good.
Excellent.
Staying busy. I've been working with a lot of bands. In fact, today I'm pretty excited to talk about one of the bands I've been working with.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to listen to you talk about it, actually. This is a really cool, sort of unique topic that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Jake. Hey, Jake, how are you?
Hey.
Good to see you again.
Hey, from Santa Ana.
Yeah, Santa Ana rocks. See, Santa Ana's where I'm from, so yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's go ahead and just get into it. I think we've got some people watching. I know we got at least Jake, so that's good enough for me. I'll go ahead and give us a couple of introductions here to kick us off. My name is Jason Fernandez. I am the live sound training specialist here at QSC, and joining me as always for these live tech talks is Golden Preciado. She's a recording and front of house mix engineer especial with expertise, including but not limited to churches and house of worship, live sound for the churches and house of worship sector. And we're very excited to have her join in on these and have us helping us out at QSC and just spreading the education for live sound and TouchMix and all the good stuff. So
all good stuff.
Today, I'm actually pretty excited about what we have lined up for this Tech Talk. This is a pretty cool story. So just to set this up, and then I'll unleash you, Golden, and let you tell the story.
Yeah.
In one of our earlier Tech Talks, Golden was actually contacted by one of the viewers. It was the sound person for a local Irish folk rock band who plays kind of all over Orange County in Southern California, from what I understand. And they were having some very specific issues kind of with their sound setup and running their sound. And from what I understand, and I'm sure you'll give us more details, they were somewhat novices and still kind of learning about sound and how to mix and how to get things sounding good. So they joined one of our Tech Talks, which was awesome, reached out to Golden with a few questions, and Golden actually set up a meeting with them and met with them and completely got them dialed in, solved all of their initial issues, and kind of got their mix set up appropriately, and then kind of went above and beyond and showed them a couple of other tips and tricks beyond what their concerns were to kind of really kind of dial their mix in and dial their whole setup in, even outside of the mixer scene, from what I understand. This is pretty cool. So we're going to take a deep dive into her experience with this band and take a look at how she helped them and what their kind of initial mixer scene she set up for them was. And hopefully like some of the information that we got, this is obviously kind of a very specific use case for all of this, but the information I'm sure that she gave them is fairly universal, especially if you're in a group or that has some more eclectic instrumentation. I think it would be very, very helpful for you. And even if not, it should be pretty interesting to kind of see how this went and how this worked. Yeah. Hey, Jerome from Cincinnati.
Yay. Hey, Jerome, how are you?
Welcome.
Good to see you on here with us.
So go ahead. Yeah, take it away, Golden. Tell us all about how this went down and what you did.
Yeah. Well, this group is a 5-piece Irish folk rock band. They have guitars, mandolin, fiddle, accordion, bass, drums, and an Irish drum called a borhan.
Ooh,
and they play.
These are very difficult to play. I actually have one of those.
Oh, you
Now,
do.
is
You are so fancy, Jason.
uh,
It's awesome.
yeah.
They play in traditional Irish pubs. They play pub songs, contemporary songs, and even contemporary songs with an Irish twist, plus all the standard Irish tunes. The lead singer and the one who actually contacted me, his name is Murph Carey, and he started the band a few years ago. And they're also able to take this 5-piece and perform as a duo and a trio option. And here's the cool thing. His daughter is a champion Irish dancer. And
Oh, cool.
she and her friends will often join the band.
Oh, rad.
And I got to witness this at the Sawdust Arts Festival, where I went and watched them play after I had set them all up. So it's pretty cool. And I have a video at the end I'm going to show that highlights that, and it's pretty cool. So
Right
they
on.
play in pubs, festivals, local breweries, fundraisers, house parties, you name it. You want them? You want Irish music? You got it. The name of the band is Killian's Bridge. Killian's Bridge. And yeah, it was pretty
Bridge.
fun. Yeah, it was pretty fun when Murph found me. He sent me a direct message on Facebook, and that's how this all got started. We discovered that we lived really close to each other. We're both Santa Ana people. So I offered to go to their house and set up in their backyard and dial them all in and teach them everything that I could in the short amount of time that we had. So that was a pretty awesome, fun experience. And here's the thing that's so cool. It's kind of like a family and friends affair. The wife, Lisa, is their sound person. And she does a wonderful job mixing sound. But the thing that I love is that she is a wife, she is a mom who is mixing great sound for her husband's band. And it just reminded me that if you learn these few basic things on a TouchMix, anyone can mix on a TouchMix. Do you remember from Ratatouille?
true.
Do you remember the line
Oh, yeah.
from that movie?
Yes.
Anyone can cook.
Anyone. That's right. You get the right
So
ingredient.
that's the way I feel about the TouchMix. Anyone can mix on a TouchMix.
I love that.
You don't have to have a degree in order to put up a great mix on a TouchMix.
Right.
Yet
Right.
the TouchMix has pro functionality features for advanced engineers as well. So it's just an awesome little mixer.
No matter what your skill level is, TouchMix
Yeah.
is a great tool.
Yeah. So really quick, I'm going to see if I can bring up my shared picture. Oh, I think you might have to do that for me, Brad. Go ahead and bring up yeah, there we go.
Real quick shout out to Dan joining from the UK. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Aw. Yes, it's so good to see you guys. So this is Killian's Bridge. And
Cool.
what they have missing from this picture, because she was with her family, was their violinist. She's a rock and fiddle player, and between her and the accordion, it's just amazing the things they do.
Oh man, let me hear this.
Very talented musicians. So you can see they have accordion, guitars, bass, and drums. And here I am at their house, and we had set everything up. And that there is Lisa, and she is Murph's wife, and she's mixing on her iPad right now. And it was, even when I got to her, she was already moving around the mixer quite easily and knew where everything was, though she didn't know what everything did yet. So
right.
That's what we did. We went through what stuff is doing. It's cute. She calls it going in the back door. So we went in the back door of every instrument and made it sound stellar.
Nice.
And there she is mixing on her iPad at the Sawdust Arts Festival that took place in Laguna Niguel. And I have to say, being here with this band at this festival was awesome, because I had listened to a lot of other bands during that day. My husband and my son and I had been hanging out at the festival, and wow, when the downbeat of this band went down, it was just night and day, and the area got super crowded and people were totally interested in what was going on here. But it was noticeable the quality that they produced over the other bands. So there is Lisa sitting back on the edge there, mixing away. And this works on an iPad so well because in so many places now, people do not want to have a front of house footprint, which makes
Sure.
the iPad just ideal for getting the job done.
Yep, absolutely.
And right here, there you can see they're running legacy K12s along with 112s on the subs. They had just bought those subs. So while we were at their house, I showed them how to set the crossover points.
Cool.
And we decided instead of setting them in the mixer, we would set them on the speakers so that as they created new scenes, there wouldn't be anything lost just in case somebody accidentally moved the crossover point on the mixer. So we decided not to put those points in the mixer.
And so it was a full, so they've got a full QSC rig, which is awesome.
Yes.
And so it was a full setup that you did with them. You ran down, they kind of got everything, every element dialed in.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know if you can see on this K12, but they have the extended sub option checked on there.
It's a little small, but if you know what it looks, you can see it.
Yeah. Now you'll notice they're plugged into side B, and I know some people are like, why side B? I have once in a while forgot to turn off the mic line button on side A.
Ouch.
And I plugged into side A, and the system just wailed into feedback.
Oof.
So I have made it a point from here on out, I will use side B just in case I forget to put the A side back online. When you're running mains from the mixer, you want to have that in line position, not mic. We only use the mic position on our K speakers when we're actually plugging a microphone straight into the speaker.
Yep, directly.
I would say
without a mixer.
Yeah, and I would say after you're done plugging that mic in, just immediately put it back to line when you're finished with the event. That's a helpful thing to remember.
That is a helpful practice there. But just if another best practice, like you've outlined, if you're not using a mic, just use B.
Yes, absolutely.
You're safe either way.
Yeah. Yep. And here are their new 112 subs. This was their first time out with them here at the Sawdust Festival.
Cool.
Yeah.
Inaugural run.
We crossed everything over at 80 hertz, which was great for their band. And I do have to say something about this sub. While we were there, a kid put a very, very large glass of water on the sub. And then proceeded to knock it over and drenched all the electronics.
Oh, no.
And the water got inside the electronics and flipped the breaker on. And so we lost a whole side of the house. I immediately heard it and went over there, unplugged everything, turned everything off on that side while they continued to play out of house left and wiped everything down, dried it off. And then I went to the breaker box and switched the breaker. And when everything was dried, everything went back on as if nothing had happened. So that was good.
That is good.
All this to say, I think it's important when you go out with subs that are on poles like this to have curtains that, I don't know what you call them. They drape around the whole speaker.
Like a skirt?
A skirt, yes, a skirt that will actually cover the surface, the top surface of the sub, so nobody can set drinks on it. Even at Campus Jacks, when I've had the subs there, people were setting their liquor all over it and spilling it, and I'm like, okay, this can't happen anymore.
No.
So I am putting skirts now from the top speaker and covering the top part of the sub so nobody can set stuff on it.
Smart. Yep, definitely a good idea.
And here is their TouchMix 16, and you can see their 112 there in the background.
Yeah.
They have a TP link
as well for that strong connection. Yep.
They had trouble with their connection when I came in, and I noticed that they were set on wireless instead of wired, which was an easy fix for this situation. We did buy a new router. I noticed the router they had was intermittent. So
not cutting it.
So for in their backyard. We just used the little dongle for the time being. And then they bought this TP-Link and it hooked up absolutely no problem after that with the correct settings. So with that said, it's time to dive into the mixer.
Let's do it. Yes, I'm excited. And I think we've already
Yes.
got at least one question regarding kind of how you got them set up specifically. It was like Jake, another Santa Ana native there, also is in a Irish folk band. So
and he wants to
inquired
know
about
how they
the
mic
accordion
theirs.
specifically. Yeah. So I think this is going to be. Go ahead.
I think I have a picture of that in there. Did I get a picture of that? Let me back up a little bit. He is mic'd with an SM Beta 57.
There you go.
And that is the mic that they chose because it was in their inventory. There are several different ways to make it work. And honestly, with most mics, you can eventually dial in the sound you want. And I'll show you what I had going on my board. So I'm going to switch cameras right now. Let me. There we go. There's my. So looking at the output section, I just wanted to go over what they had because they're using a mix of in-ear monitors over here and wedges. So the bass player had a wedge, the violin player had a wedge. Everybody else was using in-ear monitors. And they talked about adding more in-ear monitors. So I showed them the stereo aux outputs on the TouchMix, which aren't in this picture, but they're over there up to the upper right.
There you go.
Where you can run more stereo headphone mixes. So they can get 2 more stereo mixes out of there if they want. And then you'll notice right here on this part of the output, their sub. I put their sub on an aux so I could give them control because they play in so many different venues and spaces that they're going to need that kind of control. And looking over here at their inputs, we have, and I asked Lisa to tell me where she wanted everything. So she actually went and started by entering in presets for everything, and then we titled them. And presets are right here on this tab, if you can see it. And I told her, enter in a vocal, and she would enter in a vocal preset. And that's how we would get started.
Okay.
And then
excellent starting point.
Yeah. And then I did some initial listening and created a start place for their EQ, but that's not going to be where the EQ landed in the end because I needed to hear where everything was sitting in relation to the whole band. But I did start out with, I had them individually sing and play their instruments, and I was able to set a start EQ and compression. It was different. It was at a different place for each voice. And I also dialed in some effects for them.
Very cool.
And you can see I have a combination of the lush reverb and the mono delay there.
Yep.
Set at about 240 milliseconds. And that worked really well for this band. So we kept it there. Next, they had guitars. And on their guitars, I entered in the preset, but for what their pickup sounded like, we made quite a few adjustments on it to get to where it needed to sound. It didn't end up being quite like the preset
looked like.
Yeah. Now, the preset is a great starting place, and presets are always a great starting place, but you'll want to listen and dial in from there. Pickups, depending on where they're placed and where they're picking up from, will change the sound. So that's why we made these adjustments. And I have a very light compression on the guitars. They weren't hitting them too hard, and I had very little gain reduction. I didn't want them to sound squashed because this type of music is acoustic. So I didn't want the feeling of them being squashed.
I was just going to ask to clarify that. So these are acoustic guitars we're dealing with here.
Yes, acoustic guitars. Yeah. And we did add some instrument reverb to those. Not so much that you could actually hear the reverb, but enough so that it filled it out. So that's what happened there on those. And then moving over to accordion.
Yes.
And now this was an instrument that I hadn't listened to for a while. So I actually acoustically had him play for me.
Okay.
For a while, so I could get a feeling in my mind of what the natural sound of that instrument was. And then I started dialing it in. Now, its lowest note is a G below middle C. So it's not playing any of the low end. Our roll-off point, if you see right here with using the low cut, it's quite high. Yeah.
That's really high.
Cut out a bunch. Yeah. I noticed that the instrument by nature was very, very bright at the top. So we applied quite the roll-off as well. Now
kind of focusing it in on more of that mid-range there, huh?
Exactly. And it actually worked. I know you see the roll-off, but I promise you, the highs when you listen to the music, they are there. They are very present. This is what it needed to make it so it didn't hurt.
Got it.
And we did apply some very light compression to that, but not a whole lot. He works his mic some, so we didn't want to compress it too much. While he's backed off it, the compressor is not even engaging. While he's in, it's just barely touching. And it's only about 1.5 to 1. So it's just, he wasn't playing it over dynamically. So this actually worked for this. And we did apply some delay and instrument reverb to this, which worked really well in it. And the delay is actually kind of mixed in with the instrument reverb. So you're not hearing the delay. It's creating a texture of effects that surrounds the instrument.
Yeah.
And moving over to our electric fiddle, I started with a violin preset over here, and I ended up adjusting it some. The electric violin has no acoustics to it at all. So we kind of had to create and shape its sound with the electronics. So this is what we came up for the violin. And you'll notice this bump here.
I did notice that,
And the reason we did that is because the accordion and the violin are often doubling lines. And the accordion already was taking up a great amount of the higher frequencies and not very many of the lower tones. Now, even though the violin also has a low note of a G below middle C, it was creating overtones that the accordion was not. So I actually emphasize those a little bit in our low end, so that when they play together, it was they each had their own space, even though they were playing the same notes.
That's a perfect example of mixing to the mix. You obviously you want to use your EQ to kind of shape each individual sound to get it to sound its best, but you're also you're focusing on the overall mix and how everything fits in together. And that's a great example of that, of getting those two elements to kind of sit nicely and play
precisely.
Given that they have a very similar range. That's really cool.
So we did add some effects to those. You'll notice I added a little bit more of the effects on the violin than I did the accordion. The accordion already had ambient noise going on, so it didn't need a whole lot more effects. But the electric violin, being electronic only, needed a little bit more to create the feeling of a bigger instrument. So that was the reason we have a bit more effects on the violin. And next we have our mandolin, which he played for a bit, but not a ton. But same thing on a mandolin. The low note on that is a G below middle C, so hence the roll off here.
In
the low cut. And it's also a pretty tinny instrument that plays along in the same space with the accordion. So we took out a little bit of 5K there to give space to the accordion.
Okay.
And it worked out beautifully when they were playing together.
Very cool.
And we have very slight compression on the mandolin, but not too heavy, again, because this is an acoustically driven band.
Yeah.
And let's see, the acoustic violin, I didn't get to do much on that. I did get an EQ on it, but she didn't play it a whole lot. She likes her electric. So
There you go. Gotta go with the electric.
yeah, well, it looks really cool. The electric violin looks really cool. So then over to the drums. And over here on their kick, that ended up being their kick EQ. I did start with a preset. And I made a few changes on the preset that I actually made after the band started playing. The preset sounded wonderful by itself, but when the band started playing, I noticed we needed a few little adjustments there.
Sure.
Yeah, the little bump at 80 hertz was what I added there. Very cool. Helped give it just a little more body to it than it had. And then, of course, I pushed that sub. I pushed the kick in the sub. Now, I want you to notice I only have 3 things assigned to my sub.
Yep.
I'm in my sub mix right now. Those are those brand new 112s that they got.
You've got your kick, you've got some low toms, and your bass.
Yes,
sounds
exactly.
About right.
Yeah. And so that worked out really well.
Can I also ask what preset did you start with for the kick drum there?
They have one that's, it's sub rock.
I was gonna say, that was a very
compression
rock-esque looking EQ curve there, with the wide mid scooped out, and then the highs kind of brought up a little bit, so you get more of the beater snap on the head.
Yeah, and they do a lot of stuff where it's just kick in the instruments, so it's helpful to have that
driving like 4 on the floor.
Yes, and what they do is the dancers will play to the kick, and they'll dance to the kick. So it's a pretty neat dynamic that they had going on. And then looking at the snare, one thing I forgot to mention that I should mention on the kick, is I used noise gates.
A gate.
Gates, yes, noise gates keep the mic closed until the meter hits a certain threshold, and then it opens up the mic. And then when it goes down below that threshold, it closes the mic.
Yeah.
And what it does is it takes away some of the bleed, thereby creating a much more tight and punchy sound from that instrument. So I did
away a lot of this, like this ambient stage noise and kind of the resonant noises that can kind of bleed into those microphones, and you don't really need that if all you really want to hear from the drum is the hit, the transient, right? So gates are very commonly used on drums.
Yeah, and you can see right here the gate is closed because there's no signal going through it, but once the signal goes up to its threshold right here, not like I can actually read my screen, but the gate will open. And you'll see this gate open there as it allows the signal to go through. So I did that on the kick and the snare. The snare, I had to do less of a gate because some of their stuff had rolls and paradiddles and stuff where I needed the gate to be open. So I couldn't set quite as an aggressive gate on the snare.
When it, being a little bit more active and busy on that drum, right?
Yeah. Now, I did add quite a bit of reverb to the snare.
Very
and with the gate, the punchy snare and then the reverb tail, it creates a wonderful sound.
Nice.
Moving over to that tom. Is that the tom? Yeah. Definitely had a pretty tight gate on there. The tom tends at times, if it hasn't been tuned, will be pretty boingy sounding. So this gate will help it not be quite so boingy. It'll close the mic off, so at least the reinforced sound is tighter. now the acoustic sound we can do nothing about. It's just the
Yeah.
way it is.
Okay, just a
But-
hint to all you drummers out there: learn how to tune your toms. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
It helps
yeah.
so much.
On this band, I didn't use compression. The type of playing that they didn't need it.
Yeah, cool.
Being an acoustic band, it is very dynamically driven.
Mhm.
So I didn't want everything to be squashed and have
Yeah.
the same volume all the way through. The drums
Yeah.
needed to rise and fall with the band. So
It needs to breathe. It needs to have its dynamics kind of as they are. Very
right.
cool.
And here's my overhead. I have an overhead left and right, and they have about the same EQ on it. But notice the roll off, the low cut roll off is at 250 hertz. That's pretty high, and that's when you listen to cymbals, they don't make a whole lot of low end noise. So we rolled out everything that wasn't there on the cymbals. Now I can do that since the tom and snare are mic'd. Had I not mic'd the snare or the tom, I would have needed to add quite a bit back into those overhead mics in order to capture the frequencies that I needed to from the snare and the tom. For jazz, I'll have a EQ that is has a low cut of about 90 to 100 hertz, just so I can pick up some of the resonance from the tom drums.
Perfect.
But in this situation, this was working really well for their overheads.
Cool.
And then, by the way, they were using condenser mics, and most overheads do utilize condenser mics, and those require phantom power. Phantom power, I'm on bass now. Hold on, let me get back. Phantom power can be found right here, and it sends electrical right back down to the mic. The mic needs, those condenser mics need electrical power, so it sends electrical power right on back down the XLR line, but you do need to access it right here. Right. It's in the setup menu. It's titled 48 volts. Most condenser mics will need that. Some of them have their own battery operation outside the board, but these days, yeah, it's a lot easier. So moving on over to bass.
So actually, before we get into bass, I do have a couple of questions that I want to address at this point. So far, when we've kind of been stepping through this mix, as you've shown the instruments, when you've shown your effects page, it looks like you're using a couple of different, you're utilizing the two reverbs that are on the TouchMix.
Yes.
Did I see that correctly?
Yeah. I have on.
Go ahead.
On my vocal reverb, I'm using that Lexicon, the Lush reverb.
Yep.
And one thing I want to note about the vocal reverb is the pre-delay that I have on it, which I have found was super helpful by delaying the entry point of when the reverb came in, allowed the vocal to poke through. It didn't sound so washed out. And I could have a little bit larger size of a room without washing out the vocals. So the pre-delay of 40 milliseconds worked really well for these guys.
Pre-delay is a great little knob on your delay. Can really clean up the sound of the delay and really give some nice sparkle and give some intelligibility and clarity back to that instrument or voice, but you're still getting that really nice kind of lush reverb at the end of it.
I did add my own roll off to the vocals of
Always
that
a good idea
on the reverb.
Yep.
Because they weren't singing below, they weren't singing very low, so it didn't make sense to have all that in there. It, depending on the music, on the style of music, adding this little shimmer right here is also a pretty cool effect.
Totally.
This band didn't need that because they were already getting tons of shimmer from the accordion and the violin. So
the high end going on.
Yeah, I already opted to keep that out. But it is effective for, like in House of Worship, that little bump there, this shimmer on the reverb sounds so nice on the vocals.
Cool.
So moving over to my next one, the vocal delay. Here's what I had, 240 milliseconds of delay on the vocal, but it was mixed in with the reverb to create a texture. It wasn't something that's prominent in the mix. And one thing I did made sure I did on this was that I applied a low cut to remove a bunch of the low frequencies from the delay, and then I also applied a high cut, and because you don't want to hear you don't want to actually when it's mixed in with the vocal like this, you don't want to actually hear the it, and rolling off some of the high end helps alleviate some of that. So that was the vocal delay. And then I had an instrument reverb using that lexicon as well with some pre-delay on it, but I had used a smaller size or a smaller, less reverb in there.
And which instruments were you running through this one?
I am running violin, accordion, guitar at different amounts, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Understood.
I did share some delay on the accordion and the violin from the vocal delay.
Okay.
Had I had another effects channel, which I do on the TouchMix 30, but not on the TouchMix 16, I would have created my own delay and had it be a little bit larger of a delay. But I was using my available resources, and I created what I did from the vocal delay and a combination of this lexicon, the Lush reverb here.
Yeah.
The last thing I have on my effects is the drum reverb.
There you go.
And the drum reverb, I didn't do too long of a decay. I'm only at 1.25 there. And I did do a pre-delay on that. And the pre-delay also, the same as the vocals, helps the initial transient, the hit, to poke through before the reverb starts, which is super helpful.
The other thing that I want to that is clear here that I want to kind of highlight is that for the snare drum, you're no longer using the lush reverb. You've moved to the dense reverb option.
Yes.
Can you quickly kind of just describe why that choice was made, and maybe a little bit of what the differences are between the two?
The dense. First of all, I learned what these reverbs did by sampling them, so I can't give you the super technical explanation.
I want to hear.
I brought up a drum preset for this, for this effect, and the drum preset used this dense reverb, and I played with it, and then I played with the lush reverb, and I liked what I heard from the dense reverb better than the lush reverb. So that is how I decided on a dense reverb for drums.
They have different qualities and characteristics that kind of work better on certain instruments in certain styles of music, and so that's kind of
especially for
the option of the two.
Yeah, especially for rock, I liked the dense reverb better. Yep. I tend to lean on the lexicon, the lush reverb, with a smaller space for jazz drums. But for rock, I like this one. It's pretty rock and roll.
Yeah, it is. Cool.
One other thing I wanted to highlight before we left their session here was that I set her up some DCAs, drums being one of them.
Yep.
But I did not include the kick drum in her drum DCA.
Okay.
The reason being is in small rooms, they may need to bring that drum DCA all the way down because the room is small, but you will always need a good amount of kick.
Yep.
When you're mixing, you want to listen for the bass guitar and the kick to be working together and mix those in together. And if you put the kick in a DCA, it doesn't give you the control that you need to mix that kick in with bass. So that's her drum DCA. And of course, we put the vocals in a DCA. The other thing we did is we put her house in a DCA, the main, left, right, and the sub. And Jason, really quickly, I will have you explain why we put the sub and the mains in a DCA.
Well, because you still want to, the point of running your subs on an aux it gives you that independent control of your sub. As we kind of took a look at, you can assign and mix your subs individually and tailor the mix for the subs. You also have a separate volume control for your outputs. So you have your mains powering your top loudspeakers, and you have that aux output powering your sub. So you can actually kind of set your levels differently according to what your needs are. However, it's still very, very advantageous to have one fader that controls the entire system, everything all at once. So once you kind of get your mains and your sub volumes dialed in about where you want them, that's great. From there, maybe you just want one fader that allows you to kind of push the whole system or back the whole system off. And that's where your DCA comes in. You assign those 2 channels to DCA, and then you have your full system fader control there. So yeah, very, very handy to employ that technique when you are running your subs off of an aux. Very cool.
Now, if we hadn't to put the aux fed sub in a DCA, if they had gone and turned down the mains,
that's right,
they would just be left with a bunch of sub.
You still have
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's not very helpful.
No, yeah. So that's why we put both those in this house DCA. So in effect, this is their main volume button for all, not the left, right.
Very cool.
So that's why we did that. And really quickly, I'm going to switch back to my other camera here.
Also, I know we're kind of pushing time at this point, but we did have a good question a little earlier on while we're still talking about the mix. Jake, again from Santa Ana, says that in his group, he has 2 fiddles that play simultaneously very frequently. And it's kind of just trying to find a tonal balance between the two. And I think you showed kind of, not in this group, they don't have 2 fiddles, but they definitely have a few instruments, between the accordion, the mandolin, and their fiddle. They have 3 instruments that kind of occupy very similar
same space. Yeah.
And so you kind of definitely showed how you can use your EQs to kind of accent and take away particular elements of those instruments that kind of allow them to have their own space and fit in the mix. And if you're dealing with those 2 fiddles, I would say it is the same instrument. So depending on what you mean by simultaneously, are they doubling lines, or are they playing the same line at the same time, or are they playing different lines kind of over in and each other, like a lead and a counterpoint or something like that?
Well, in the Irish music, I noticed they're doing a lot of doubling, and then they split off.
I think, in that style, yeah. So I would just try to find, kind of, and it could be arbitrary. It could be just like, for this one, I'm going to decide that I'm going to pull out a little more of this and take away this, and on the other one, you do sort of the opposite. You kind of allow that one to breathe in a little bit different areas of its sonic space. But that's essentially how you're going to get that to work. Also, you can use your pan controls. That kind of can allow them to occupy different physical space in the PA.
Yeah. If you're in a situation where most of the listeners will be between the speakers, that's a great idea. When I was at the Sawdust Festival, they didn't have such a perfect space, so they had to turn their speakers to capture as much as possible. So we ran everything in mono just so we could point the speakers to
everyone can hear
as much sound as possible. Yep. Shout out to Lisa, from our sound person for this group, who is online watching us. Hey, Lisa.
Comment from the band itself. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah. She got a whole lot of information all at once. I'm sure it felt like a fire hydrant for her. So at some point, I'll go back to a few more of their events and just put into action some of the stuff that I showed her in our initial backyard training.
Super cool.
So we do have a quick little video clip of Killian's bridge playing at the Sawdust Festival, the Sawdust Arts Festival. So Brad, let's go ahead and bring that up, and you can see what they do.
Let's check it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
I love Irish music. It's so happy.
It is. It's just a good
Yeah.
time.
They did a bunch of cover tunes in an Irish twist too. So
Oh,
that
that's
was really
fun.
cool.
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to go check
Yeah.
these guys out one time. This is
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah.
But and just
Real quick before,
in
oh,
that sorry, I mean in that clip, I was kind of just paying attention to the different elements in the mix, and it was pretty amazing how how similar the different instruments are, but how they still remain independent. I could definitely pick out the violin. I can hear the accordion doing its thing. I could hear the mandolin kind of
yeah.
doing some picking kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Yeah, awesome music too.
Yeah. Yeah. They're great players. They're excellent musicians. Real quick before you go, I wanted to let you know about a couple of our Facebook groups. We have the
Yep.
TouchMix, QSC TouchMix group, everything TouchMix that you might want to know. And then we also have our church sound training group, which was created for church volunteers, but the concepts are universal. And hey, you guys, stay tuned because coming soon on the QSC website, we'll be launching an AVIXA accredited audio program specifically designed for houses of worship with a special emphasis on equipping volunteer workers. So
That's
super excited about that. Pass it on. It's a free course.
Mm-hmm.
We want you guys to learn and feel equipped and confident when you go out there and mix. Let us know what you'd like to learn in the future in Tech Talks in the comments below. That would be super helpful in planning for our future Tech Talks.
No, that's
and,
right.
It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. And Jason, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
Always
have to be on
a lot
these.
of great, yeah, a lot of great stuff. Stuff I forget, you fill in, and yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. We get a good dialogue going on these. It's very
yeah.
a lot of information that we're kind of spitting out there as well. So I really hope that it's helping people. We're gonna keep doing it. So yeah, just send us your comments, send us ideas or things that are troubling you or that you'd like to learn more about or that you're confused about. We'd love to talk about all of it.
Absolutely. Have an awesome rest of your day, everyone, and we'll see you on the next QSC Tech Talk.
Absolutely.